Good morning. Before I start the announcements, I would like to say that there is some video being made today. If you are one of those who don't want the CIA to know what you look like, maybe we can figure out a way to make sure your face is not shown in the video. Is there anyone who's particularly concerned about the privacy issue and that we need to work with? Okay, those of you doing videotaping, please do not include that woman in any videotaping you're doing. Can you handle that? See, and those who come late don't get the warning. When they find out they're part of history.
Wait.
Let me begin at the beginning. Good morning. Welcome to the Humanist Community Sunday Forum. My name is Arthur Jackson, current president of the Humanist Community. The Humanist Community is a chapter of the American Humanist Association, and humanism is a progressive philosophy of life that without supernaturalism affirms our ability and responsibility to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the personal good of humanity. That's the greater good of humanity. And as I always say, those of you here who've been here before, if those words sound like representing an organization you would like to be associated with, I invite you to join and become part of the humanist community. Because we are seeking members, and we will hope that 2007 will be a fantastic year of growth for our community. Okay, with that, I will ask our Executive Director, Paul Gilbert, to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Arthur. It gives me real pleasure anytime that I can introduce one of our own to make the forum presentation, and particularly it's a special pleasure this morning with MarcPerkel. If any of you have visited his website, it's not just his website, it's the website of the Church of Reality. There's a huge amount of very good information there that tells you a lot about it, and a lot about other related topics as well. So I'm sure he may refer to it again, but if he forgets, it's simply thechurchofreality.com will get you there. Mark has been in California about a half dozen years, I think. He's been a part of this community for about a year. Grew up in West Virginia in Wheeling. Hitchhiked around the country for a few years. Settled for a time in Missouri. Part of that's been in southwestern Missouri in the nice mountain commune. Beat me by about 10 years getting into a commune, but he was there longer than I was. I'm pleased to present Mark this morning. He is on the watch list, I guess you would call it, for the Homeland Security folks. So he must be doing something right. He's not so dangerous that they've kept him from flying, but he's doing something good, it appears. It's a pleasure to present MarcPerkel.
Hello everyone, I'm MarcPerkel. I'm the founder of the Church of Reality. The Church of Reality is a religion based on believing in everything that's real. And, so you wonder, well, what is it that's real? Do we tell you what's real? And the answer is no. It's really about the pursuit of reality, since nobody knows what reality actually is. So I got this idea for the Church of Reality about 8 years ago, back in 1989. I was sitting at home and thinking about religion, and all of a sudden the idea occurred to me, Church of Reality, why don't we start a religion based on believing in everything that's real? And I thought, well, that's kind of a novel concept. It was kind of odd that nobody had ever come up with the idea of believing in reality before. So the next morning, it seemed like it was still a good idea, and I checked the domain name, and nobody had taken the domain name Church of Reality, so I registered the domain name on November 8th, 1998, and that's where the Church of Reality started. So at first it was just going to be sort of like a parody on religion because, like many of you, I was kind of frustrated with Christianity and, the arrogant attitudes of the religious people and the fact that, all these people were believing in something that just wasn't real. So I thought, well, what am I going to write, as far as a holy book? Because every religion needs to have some type of a holy book. And I thought, well, if I start writing something 100 years from now, it's going to be, 2/3 of it's going to be wrong. It's going to be obsolete. And so the first thing I realized was that any time, somebody is going to write a book about reality, it's something that's going to have to change as time goes on. So the Church of Reality isn't a religion that looks backwards toward the moment that the religion started. The Church of Reality is a religion that looks forward to the future and is continually evolving, and it evolves the same way that we evolved, and it sort of matches our own evolution. Since the Church of Reality is about the pursuit of reality, it's based on the idea that we have a certain amount of knowledge and that we pursue reality in order to gain more knowledge so that we can understand the universe that we live in. So to understand the universe that we live in, we can understand it only to a limited extent by ourselves, because the way the human mind works is that our understanding of reality is essentially collective understanding rather than individual understanding. If humans are put out in the woods as individuals, we become barely different from animals. And you've seen stories about, a girl found in woods, after 18 years living in Vietnam, and, the people become very much like animals if they live by themselves without any contact with other people. So the human race is more similar to a hive of bees than it is individuals, in that our understanding of the universe is collective. We don't build a Hubble telescope in our backyard and launch it into space on our own. And if you look around at the world around us, you'll see that everything that you look at was built by people other than you. That this is our existence is based on community, and the thing that makes us different from the other animals that have evolved on this planet is that we have the ability to share complex information. So if the Church of Reality is about the pursuit of reality, then we have to pursue reality collectively and link our minds into sort of like a mental network, sharing information so that the human race can evolve forward based on our increase in the understanding of the world the way it really is. So since the Church of Reality is about the pursuit of reality, and we do that collectively, then it's really about the positive evolution of society. In order to evolve forward and understand reality better, we have to evolve forward as a society. The human race has to evolve forward in the amount of information that we understand. And we have, in the Church of Reality, we call our collective knowledge the tree of knowledge, which is a term that I ripped off from Christianity, Judaism, Islam, except that in the Church of Reality, it's not the tree of knowledge of good and evil, it's just the tree of knowledge, which sort of refers to the mathematical tree, that knowledge is all connected to other knowledge, and that it sort of grows as a fractal. So the symbol for the tree of knowledge is a fractal, and that we increase our knowledge by increasing the horizon of understanding. Like other religions, the Church of Reality has its own terminology, and I've been mostly developing this myself with a lot of help from people who visit the website. It's a web-based religion, and the website represents the doctrine and knowledge of the religion, and I call it the kernel after the Linux kernel, which is because the Church of Reality is not a religion that's owned by anybody. Reality is owned by everybody, and that this is an open source religion, and it evolves with the input of people contributing their knowledge and experience to the tree of knowledge, which is what we call intellectual tithing. We don't tithe with money in the Church of Reality. You tithe with ideas, and you tithe with your mind. And what you contribute to the knowledge of the universe, you help evolve all of us, and that you become a permanent part of the tree of knowledge. For instance, Darwin is part of the tree of knowledge, even though he's no longer here today, as with Einstein and Newton and all the great minds whose stories we still tell to this day, because these people were people who, developed a certain amount of eternal life, in that they have contributed enough to the human race that their stories are still told today. The Church of Reality we don't believe in an afterlife, but the effect that you have on the tree of knowledge does live beyond your years if you do something that's worth remembering. So that and being aware of the fact that there's this common knowledge, it allows people to consider in your own life whether or not you want to do something that's worth remembering, what it is that you want to do to affect the tree of knowledge, to have a certain amount of limited immortality, in that your thoughts and your ideas will live beyond your years and beyond everybody who knew you. Because once you get to the point where everybody who ever knew you has passed on, then if you haven't done anything significant, then you become forgotten. So to consider that you are part of this network of human minds that is part of the evolution of the human race lets you be aware that you can find a way to fit in and to be part of this sort of like this common mind space that we all have that helps evolve us into something better than we are today. At this point, I just want to ask how many people here, I'm going to ask about your religious background. How many people here are Christian, former Christian background? Okay, let's see, majority. How many people are Jewish? Okay, Islam. One. Buddhist, Hindu, Eastern. Okay. Some other miscellaneous. How many are atheists? Been atheists? Okay. What I have here is that before I came here, I invited God to show up here to debate me, and if God does show up, he's welcome to debate me. This is his chair, and right now this chair is empty. But the thing that's different about the Church of Reality and atheism is based on that we don't believe in God. The Church of Reality is a small modification of that. Is that if God shows up in physical form where God would be independently observable, then we would believe in him. God is supposed to be omnipotent, so God knows that, God is invited. I think everybody here is okay with it. If they're not, God can come anyhow. He doesn't need our permission to show up. And the chair is empty, which means that God is aware of us and chooses not to be here. So, it's possible that God exists and he wants us to be atheists. It's the conclusion. So atheism is still the right answer, even if God exists, because it's clear that we're on our own. If an omnipotent being goes to all the trouble to hide so completely that no scientific experiment whatsoever can find any trace that he exists, it's obviously that it doesn't want to be found, and if it doesn't want to be found, who are we to dig it up? So, but the chair is there. If God appears, we all become theists. Everybody here will become a theist, I'm sure, if God appears in this chair, but we'll wait. The chair is there, and it's sort of like the Elijah's cup trick, back when I was raised Jewish, and we had Elijah's cup, and they poured wine, and this spirit was supposed to show up and drink a little of the wine from everybody who was celebrating Passover, and they never made it to our house. Of course, we always wondered why, but it didn't take long to figure out that the reason that the wine didn't change is that there was nobody there to drink it. So in the spirit of Elijah's cup, I have God's chair, and if it's not a good enough chair, then God can turn it into a throne or whatever. I have faith that God can sit in that chair if he exists. So if he doesn't show up, it's because he chooses not to. And the question for those who are theists is, why is the chair always empty? I guess if God shows up, he can move this gentleman out of the chair. Or maybe God doesn't show up, it's because the chair's already taken, but we have other chairs that are capable. God wants to speak here.
You asked for physical form, so I take the form of this human. But you need not limit me to physical form. Would you call your experience to be a physical effect in the universe? I can speak through experience, and thus I speak through this human physical form. Thank you.
Okay. So, we have an appearance here. First time that's happened. Probably won't be the last time. But the difference between the Church of Reality and atheism is that atheism is about what doesn't exist. If theism goes away, atheism goes away too. The Church of Reality is about what does exist. And people wonder, well, why do we need a religion if we're not going to believe in something that doesn't exist? Or some type of superior being or whatever. And it all depends on what your definition of religion is. It's just like, I remember when I was a kid and somebody explained to me that a whale is a mammal. And I said, well, that's not a mammal. It has fins and it lives in the ocean. It's a fish. And so the Church of Reality is a religion, but it's not a religion that's like other religions. It's a religion that I call a natural religion, which is a religion based on believing in everything that's in the natural world, as opposed to the supernatural world. The supernatural world is I guess, everything that breaks the laws of physics that we can't, nail down. And the natural world is everything that exists, whether we understand it or not. So there are things in the natural world that do exist that we don't understand it. And if God is real, then, and God shows up, then God is part of the natural world rather than the supernatural world. So, God, I guess, can't show up and be supernatural, because then, he's subject to the laws of reality. So the Church of Reality attempts to answer a lot of the religious questions that you have to answer, that religion answers, but they answer wrong. The religion is more than just having a doctrine about how the universe was created by an omnipotent being. Religion was an evolutionary step. As the human race evolved and we started to communicate and we looked up in the sky and we saw the sun and the moon and the stars, and we wondered what was up there and why it was up there and how it is that anything came to be. Religion was sort of the predecessor to science and law and government. That it created a way for us to relate to each other and get along and try to explain the universe around us. And it still has the function that religion creates community, because since we are a species that relies on each other in order to survive, we need to have some type of rules, government and laws and stuff, and we have to have a reason, to have these laws and something to base these laws on. What is right and wrong? And right and wrong are arbitrary concepts. They're in the universe, out in the blackness of space, where you have stars exploding and rocks bumping into each other and planets falling into black holes. It's whatever happens, happens. And we don't know that tomorrow that some neutron star will tilt in just the right direction and bombard this planet with gamma rays and obliterate us, which could happen. But the Church of Reality is not just science. The Church of Reality is a church, and church means that it's about people. So this is the pursuit of reality by humans. It's not the pursuit of reality by space aliens. It's not the pursuit of reality by dolphins. It's not the pursuit of reality by cattle. If cattle were in charge of the planet, then eating beef would be not looked at in a different perspective, than it is if humans are the ones in charge. So, in order to have a basis for right or wrong, there's certain axioms that we have to accept, just that are arbitrary. We basically accept that the pursuit of reality by humans has value, and that our existence has value to us. And if you make those assumptions and you base everything on the name Church of Reality, everything in the Church of Reality is a logical progression of the assumption that there's value to our existence, there's value to our pursuit of knowledge, there's value to our continued evolution, and that the Church of Reality is based on the progress of the human race. And if you accept that as their premise, then you can create a moral system, because one of the things that people who are religious stay religious for, the reason they stick with it, even though they know that it's not true, is that it creates a system of right and wrong for society. They think that, well, if you take religion away and take God away, then you've taken all the rules away. There's no rule giver anymore. And then why shouldn't everybody go out and murder everybody else and take their stuff? There's no right and wrong anymore. So in order to address the problems that religion creates, because a lot of the morality of religion is based on fiction, and the deities are rather badly tempered deities often, and set a really bad example. Islam in particular is a sort of as practiced in the Middle East in particular, is a violent culture, and it's based on that God said it, and therefore I'm following God's example, and God goes out and gets angry and mass kills people, and so therefore they use that as an example, and they get angry and they kill a lot of people, and all in God's name. So in order for the human race to evolve forward in a positive direction, we try to look, evangelize reality, that reality is important, and that we talk about it from the perspective that the human race can make better decisions and evolve forward better if we use reality as the standard for making our decisions, rather than the impressions that we get by worshiping some fictional deity that isn't actually there. So the idea is that the Church of Reality, is part of one of its missions, is to figure out how we all get along with each other. And so the Church of Reality sort of embraces humanism by reference, because the humanist community has as its central mission is about people. It's about people getting along as their first premise. The Church of Reality includes that as part of the method for society to to discover reality. Although the Church of Reality is different from the humanist community in that reality is the focus of the Church of Reality. The Church of Reality is all about reality. Humanism is about humans getting along with each other in society based on a naturalistic lifestyle. So the humanism and the Church of Reality are similar, except that there's a difference in what we consider the most important element of it. And so where atheism is sort of like the first step, toward when people come from theism, then they don't believe in God. But then once you get to the point where, okay, I'm tired of just talking about what I don't believe in, what do we believe in, what are the standards and so forth, then you have to, move on to the next level of, humanism and realism. And in the Church of Reality, I have attempted to take these initial axioms and put it together in a logical structure in such a way that all the principles and the goals of the Church of Reality are based on the idea that it all starts from the name. And I essentially can answer the question that religion answers, although wrongly, as to where right and wrong comes from and what is the basis for natural law, natural government, and on the basis of what works best for humans. So atheism has avoided those questions because a lot of times once you get into the specifics about what you should do and what you should believe in, there's a lot of disagreement. So as to not get into that level of disagreement, atheism has limited itself to the fact that God doesn't exist and doesn't claim to have any type of knowledge beyond that. But going beyond that is the hard part. It's where you do the hard work. And so if God doesn't exist and right and wrong does and morality does, somebody has to figure out why. And the Church of Reality is the process for trying to answer those questions and figure out why, so that people who are religious don't have to give up right and wrong. They don't have to give up community, because there's an evolutionary basis for the reason that we don't go out and kill each other, because it's to our advantage to have an organized society, because that's how we survive. It's the same reason that with a hive of bees, that if you one bee doesn't kill another bee and steal its honey. They work together. They form a hive, they go out and they cooperate, and their survival is based on cooperative evolution. Humans are the same way. We survive, we are the way we are, because we have the ability to share knowledge and information. So, for instance, in the last 200 years, we have, even though biologically humans are barely different at all than we were 200 years ago, we're almost a different species than we were 200 years ago, because we now live twice as long as we used to live 200 years ago. We can now fly in the air. We can now go to the moon. We can talk to people on the other side of the planet instantly. And we couldn't do that before, and it isn't because, our genetics have changed in the last 200 years. The reason that we can do this stuff is because the tree of knowledge has increased at a huge rate in the last few hundred years, and that we are evolving through knowledge. And the Church of Reality recognizes that our human evolution is now community evolution and knowledge-based evolution, and we are at the point where we can say, hey, we can take and control, we can decide, we can choose what we're going to be in the future. We can decide what we're going to evolve into. Do we see the future in terms of the destruction of the human race? Do we see the future in terms of Armageddon? As many other religions, envision the future that, God's going to come and destroy the planet, and therefore they don't have to worry about things like global warming and pollution and things like that, because this planet isn't going to be here forever, and God's going to come down here as a parental figure and wipe out all the bad people and take care of all the good people, and this is temporary. The Church of Reality sees reality from the perspective is that we're here, we're on our own, and if we screw up, then we screw up. We're gone. And in 150 million years, the cockroaches will get their shot at it. So, the Church of Reality says, well, we don't want the cockroaches to have their shot at it because we're people and we're valuable and we have arbitrarily decided that our own importance has meaning. So we're going to take control of our own evolution and we're going to decide what it is that we're going to evolve into. We can decide that we're not going to destroy the earth, that it's not going to all come into an end, that we want, the next generation, that every generation is going to be better than the previous generation, and that we are going to take responsibility to make that happen. So the Church of Reality is about the future, not about the past. Most religions, their focus is on the past. They look back at, the birth and death of Jesus, or Mohammed, or Moses, or Vishnu, or whatever it is that they believe in, and everything's running downhill from there. The Church of Reality takes the opposite view. We look at the past for reference, to understand where we are today, but our focus is on the future, and our focus is on where we are going, what we are evolving into, and that we can look at the future and say, this is what we're going to be. We can look at shows like Star Trek, and we can wonder, in 200, 300 years from now, are we going to be on spaceships going around the universe at warp speed, making contact with other life forms on other planets? And are there other life forms on other planets? There's a possibility that in all the universe, this is all there is, and that we're the only life. It's unlikely that it is, and there's also very likely that life is abundant, and that on every planet that we go to, we'll probably find some form of life. As far as how evolved that life is, and whether it's capable of traveling through space and making contact, that's something that we're curious about, and we wonder about, the days when, we go beyond the moon, when we go to Mars, when we build giant spacecrafts that are capable of sustaining communities and traveling, thousands of years, off to other planets that we might eventually colonize. Because, as you know from those who understand, the way the solar system works is, we got about 3 to 4 billion years to get out of here, or we're toast. Because, the sun is going to expand and become a red giant, and this planet's going to be gone. So, that's a long time, and the rate we're progressing, we'll probably be out of here in the next 3 billion years. But, if we mess up, if we, have a nuclear holocaust, if we unleash some type of bioweapon that kills every human on the planet, then we just become like the 99.99% of all the other species that failed to, evolve and died off and that no longer exist today. So our existence depends on the good decisions that we make, and I see, as many of you do, is that religion and the belief that we're going to become extinct because God's going to come back and wipe out the earth is dangerous concepts, because those concepts affect community. It affects the world mindset. And since we're not individuals, it does matter what other people believe in, because what other people believe in affects us. If it wasn't for religion, the Iraq war wouldn't be happening right now. You have Shias that kill Sunnis, and what's the difference between Shias and Sunnis, and why should they be that way? Over, relatively minor religious differences. You have Jews killing Muslims and Muslims killing Jews, and Christians, are on a crusade, because, we got to win the whole world over for Jesus. And these are all fictional characters, except for Mohammed, who actually did exist. And because of that is probably one of the more dangerous ones, because these people, religious people, embrace violence, and they embrace the concept that the world's going to end, and that there's a higher power up there that's is a brutal higher power, and that being brutal is normal. The Church of Reality challenges those concepts. Our position is that we believe in everything that's real, so if what you believe in is real, then we'll believe in what you believe in, as long as you can establish that through good scientific methods and procedures. It does look like it's kind of running late. I'm going to kind of wrap some of this up here, but I want to open it up to questions because I want some interactive feedback here. So let me go ahead and do that at this point, so that start with this gentleman here.
Two things. One, you say the church is going to evolve just like Darwin's evolution. Darwin's evolution was very, very messy and inefficient and sort of a lot of death. I hope your church doesn't have that much death when it evolves. But
Me too.
in terms of the, this sounds a bit like Rumsfeld. There's things we know and there's things we don't know. And there's things that we don't know that we don't know. But the metric that I'm using to compare religion with church reality is this word faith. In other words, there's all these things we don't know, and then all these things that Christians don't know, and they have various ways of attributing them to God. So you have all these things you don't know, and there's no warm, fuzzy God thing to reduce our anxiety. So, I'm thinking there's a lot of things we don't know. Like, after the meeting, I'm going to walk across the street, and if there's a truck driving along, I don't know if there's a sports car behind the truck. There's a lot of things I don't know that could kill me.
Right.
And so, Jesus will say to me, if I become a Christian, how will I reduce my anxiety in the Church of Reality? And I have an answer. There's Dr. Burns at Stanford who has an answer.
Well, okay. Well, why don't you just give the answer? Because maybe the rest of you may have a better answer than I do. Because I can't guarantee you that you're going to be happier with the Church of Reality. Happiness the Church of Reality isn't about being happy and comfortable. It's about reality. So go ahead and give your answer.
Maybe people have heard of the word cognitive behavioral therapy. So Dr. Burns at Stanford, the neat thing about it is you don't need therapists, you don't need religion. It's free, you buy the book, you do the workbook, and it works. It takes someone from in terms of dealing with what we don't know, so there's all these, there's an army of 150 million evangelicals in the U.S. who are out there looking for people who are anxious. There's plenty of people who are anxious.
Right.
So if you want to steal those people away from the evangelicals, one way you can say, Dr. Burns, of course, is very reality-based, so it's been verified and re-verified in FDA testing labs.
Okay. Well, the way I deal with what I don't know is I go out and I find it and figure it out and get lots of other people to figure it out. So by evangelizing reality, I can get an army of people who are out there trying to figure out everything that I don't know, and the more stuff gets figured out, the less anxious I am about what I don't know. We cure it by knowing it. Okay, go ahead.
I pretty much agree with just about everything you said. The problem I have with what you're saying is I don't know of anybody who says they do not believe in reality. I was raised as a Catholic, and there was a time when I believed in God and Jesus and heaven and hell, and I thought that was reality. I think the problem is with faith, where people put a value of faith, that meaning believing in something when there's no evidence for it, or it's even logically contradictory. So I think faith is an issue.
Faith is an issue, and the Church of Reality is not a faith-based religion, it's a doubt-based religion. We believe that everything is subject to scrutiny, and the truth is purified by scrutiny. So we think that accepting anything based on faith is that if your God can't stand up to scrutiny, then your God doesn't exist.
Well, maybe you should call it How do you
But-
call it the church of reason?
Well,
Was it just a criterion for determining what reality is the issue? Because what if a person is religious and they believe in all that? They say they believe in reality and they want to join your church.
Well, yeah, you can say you believe in reality, but when it comes right down to it, it seems like that reality is actually unimportant and generally not discussed in most religious circles. If you look in the Bible, the word reality is only used there one time, and it's kind of not even focused on. So reality is just not part of a lot of people's religious practice. They don't think about it; they actually avoid it, and by having something out there called the Church of Reality, the name itself is a challenge. It challenges people to say, hey, there's something out there called the Church of Reality. What does that mean? What do they believe in? And it gets them thinking about reality. And anytime anybody thinks about reality, they become real in the sacred moment. And you become real in the sacred moment anytime that, you're thinking about reality, you're discussing reality with somebody else who is also, real in the sacred moment. So we look at converting people in terms of minutes rather than individuals. So if we get somebody to think about reality for 10 minutes, then they become a realist for that 10 minutes. See, we evangelize reality. We want to inject reality into the conversation. We want reality to be considered when other religions are talking about what's real. Because when they say God exists, that means God is real. So we say, oh yeah, well, how do you establish that? How do you establish that your God is real? Which God is real? What's its nature? How do you tell? See, and that gets them to think. And whenever people think about reality, it reprograms your mind. It causes your mind to think differently because the human mind is not a computer. It's a pattern matching, biological organ. And that if you establish patterns in it that are based on faith, then people start thinking in those terms. If you establish patterns that are based on reality, you're reprogramming the human race, to be reality-oriented. And that's one of the goals of the Church of Reality, is to evangelize reality, make reality important, and to insert reality into the discussion. Yes?
I'm concerned. Sorry. They gave me the mic, and it's really, really loud. I'm a bit concerned about the whole concept of church for this, because every church I've run across in my whole life and reading through history has always managed to set up a hierarchy. And it's usually men who pose as mediators between whatever the church is pushing and the ordinary people who give the money. Right?
Right.
So how is the Church of Reality going to avoid setting up a hierarchy? Are you going to end up something like the Quakers, where every person has the right to determine their own nature and relationship with reality?
Well, there's a couple answers to that. First of all is that the Church of Reality isn't a deity-based religion where we dictate to you what to believe in, so we don't have mindless followers, that we control. In fact, we are explorers, we're not followers. The other thing is the Church of Reality is not money-based, so there's not a big old wad of money that would attract that kind of people who come into the Church of Reality for money. And then I've written a lot of things. I've had a lot of people ask this question. I've put things in the sacred principles of the Church of Reality that tends to avoid that sort of thing, and have structured it as an open source religion that's sort of along the lines of the way the Linux kernel is developed, where at this point I'm sort of like a project manager of the Church of Reality that's sort of steering, organizing developers, which is the people who add, to the philosophy of it. So it's somewhat decentralized. As far as what you're talking about is, male-dominated authority figures. Men, women, and all people on the planet have an equal stake in the Church of Reality. The Church of Reality makes no distinction whatsoever on the basis of sex, sexual orientation, race, geographic location that you were born, what languages you speak. The Church of Reality includes everybody on the planet. And so by doing this, I am hoping that I have taken away a lot of the things that leads other religions to degenerate, assuming that, that they have degenerated. When I look at the history of a lot of religions, a lot of them are actually getting better than they used to. 600 years ago, the Catholic Church would have put people like me to death, and there's various places in the world where people like me would be put to death, and any atheist, you show up in Afghanistan and say, I'm an atheist, shoot me, and they will. The Church of Reality is going to help evolve the culture of the planet to make it safe for atheists to walk the streets and for men and women and people of all religions and races to have an equal footing on the planet, because we're all here, and I don't say that people are all equal, but we have the same rights as any other person regardless of where we are. So those are the things that we use to try to avoid the situation you talked about.
You talked about, you talked about accepting anybody who accepts a couple of basic axioms, and that got me wondering if you could very briefly distinguish between realism and objectivism.
Oh, okay. Objectivism is Ayn Rand's group, and realism is the word that I use, and objectivists and objectivism is almost an atheist cult, in my opinion. They got one thing right, objective reality, is a good thing. But what's called objectivists are sort of, they include, the worship of capitalism. They're down on generosity and altruism. The Church of Reality takes a very different position on that. We think that our evolution is based on sharing and generosity, and that those are things that are strengthen the human race, and that it's an evolutionary thing that we instead of original sin, we have original virtue, and so that's how we compete with the rest of them. And I'm sure that some of the ideas of the Church of Reality is ideas that I've come up with and other people have now will be found, 100 years from now will be primitive and quaint, and hopefully that, it will evolve and people will laugh at some of the things that I came up with and how ridiculous it was. But the idea is objectivism sort of like froze at the point, when Ayn Rand passed on, and it had a lot of her bizarre personality quirks incorporated in it. Same thing with Scientology, was L. Ron Hubbard's personality, and I'm actually somewhat afraid of that my personality might be emulated in certain generations. So I go out of my way to make sure that the Church of Reality is not about me. The Church of Reality is about reality. I'm just the guy who came up with the idea and got registered the domain name. So there's nothing about me that is supernatural, or I'm not the chosen one. I'm just, an ordinary person, and I'm hoping that by trying to set an example of being ordinary, that people will try to embrace, being ordinary. And I have the sacred principle of humility, which tries to take the ego out of the whole process. And because quite frankly, when it comes to anxiety and stuff, I find that if you realize how insignificant you are in the world, you can give up a lot of your emotional problems. With this planet's a speck of dust in the universe, among trillions of stars and trillions of galaxies. So, we are infinitely unimportant. And once you completely accept how infinitely unimportant you are, then you can give all that stuff up and you can just go on and enjoy life. Because the reason most people don't get anything done, and because they're worried about their standing in community and their self-importance. If you give up self-importance, then all this craziness that you're worried about, goes away, and you can just go out and have fun and do things. So, I hope that answers your question. There you go.
I don't see a big difference between what we call Church of Reality and science, I anticipate that you will say, well, Church of Reality has a moral, ethical component, right?
Yes.
But science also, I would say. We try not to experiment in human beings, for instance, although historically it happened once. We try not to, with science, to harm other people. It happens sometimes accidentally, but I don't see a clear difference. Perhaps you could clarify what the difference is between science, who also pursues reality according to.
Yes. The question is what's the difference between science and the Church of Reality? And the difference is that the Church of Reality is the religious commitment to science. Science is the actual doing, the experimenting, the learning. The Church of Reality is the religious commitment to the values behind good science. So it includes, community and all the mechanisms within society that make science possible.
Since you're a web-based organization, I was wondering how you keep spam and religious hackers out of your website. And then I was also wondering whether God had a comment or a counter-comment to all of this.
Well, the way I keep spam out of the website is because I'm in the spam filtering business. That's what I actually do, and I do web hosting, so I'm a tech. So keeping the website online and keeping the spam out and keeping the hackers out is my specialty. So I'm a programmer, and I have sort of like engineered the church, as if it were software, and I look at the Church of Reality as developing the operating system of the human race. I look very much at society as having an operating system, and it's an operating system that's sort of like evolved, and now I'm trying to sort of like create a logical structure to that so that you can say, well, why did it evolve this way, and what is better and worse, and what makes things better and what's worse and why. So it's sort of like going back and sort of like reinforcing a lot of the stuff that we have intuitively discovered through evolution, and trying to understand why it is that we do things the way we do it.
Two short questions.
Okay.
One is, are you incorporated as a religion?
Yes, 501c3. We are an official religion.
And the second is, are you familiar with the magazine started by a Jewish free-thinking guy back in the 60s, Paul Krasner, and his magazine, The Realist?
I've heard of it, but I'm not that familiar with it. I didn't invent reality. Reality invented me, and so great thinkers. There's a lot of. It's not surprising that you find people who've done the same sort of thing. One of the tests of the Church of Reality to see if we get it right is to see if we were to start over again. If I said to you, what is the Church of Reality mean to you, and you invented a religion, if you would come up with something similar to what I've done. So that's one of the tests to see, is this something that what is it in the Church of Reality that if you started over, people would come up with the same thing. And one of the things that's different is we contemplate rather than worship. So there's a cultural thing, and I have the seven sacred contemplations on the website, and I don't have enough time here to go through that. But churchofreality.org, it's on the web. Read it if you like it. You might have ideas. You might want to contribute it. You can help build it. It's there for everybody.
Thank you very much, Mark. And we always end our program with eating together. If you are here for the first time, you're invited to have lunch on us. Otherwise, we ask a $5 to $7 contribution. Thank you all for coming. Great being with you today.